Hello students, welcome back, and now I am going to teach you XML. What is XML? XML is Extensible Markup Language. So in the previous lecture you have studied about HTML, about CSS, about JavaScript. So now we are going to study about XML. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. So the agenda for today's lecture is what is XML, what is the tree structure of XML, how to write an XML, what are the elements of XML, what are attributes of XML, and namespaces of XML. Okay. Now coming to XML introduction. The first and most important thing that comes into your mind is what is XML and where it is used. So XML, as I have said already, that XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. That means, now as we know, XML was basically designed to store and transport the data. The first most important thing that comes, that XML is used to store and transport the data. Now suppose you want to send some data, you want to transport some data, so what you will do? You have to transport it. So it is always preferred for an HTML, for a web page, to transport your data with the help of XML. Since XML is very secure and it is used to transport the data, the main purpose of XML was to transport the data and store the data. Okay. Now XML was designed for both human and machine readable both. So it is a very easy language. You can easily understand XML. Okay. So as I have already said, XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. In HTML, you have also studied that HTML is also a markup language. HTML is not a programming language. Same case goes with XML. XML is not a programming, XML is also a markup language. Okay. And since we are saying extensible, it means it is expandable markup language. XML it is an expandable markup language. So since it is a markup language, you must be very clear that it will contain some tags. As in HTML, you have seen that HTML contains some tags. Same case goes for XML. XML also contains some tag. Okay. Now, second thing is that XML do not use any of the predefined tags. Now, XML don't use any. In HTML, you have seen that you have predefined tags. Suppose you want to add a heading, then there is always a heading tag. If you want to add a paragraph, you have a paragraph tag. In that way, XML don't have a predefined tag. XMLs in these tags are developed by humans, by us, by the coder. Okay. Now what you can see that XML simplifies data sharing. Now suppose I want to share some data, so with the help of web page, so XML simplifies it. It is also used for data transportation. Then XML is platform and language independent. Okay. And XML, it is very easy since all the data is available to us. Okay. So now you can say that XML is an extensible markup language. It is used to store and transport the data. XML simplifies data sharing, data transport. It is platform and language independent. Okay. Now XML do not use predefined tag. As in case of HTML, HTML uses predefined tag, but XML do not use predefined tags. Okay. Now coming to XML, how you will write an XML program. If I am saying, it's very simple. Suppose since it is very simple, because if I want to create an XML, all the tags will be created by us. There is no predefined tag. There are some rules with which you have to write that XML. Now you can see that note, and each XML opening tag has always a XML closing tag. Now note has a closing tag. In the note tag, you have written four different tags. That is to, from, heading, and body. Now that means that is from to Jani. The letter is being sent, and then in the heading you are writing reminder, and then in the body. So you can see this is how you will be writing your XML tag. You will be writing your XML program. Now this is your root tag. These all are your child tag, and this is the end of the root tag. Each opening tag must have a closing tag. Okay. Now you can see all these tags, let it be note, let it be to, let it be from, let it be heading, body or anything, or all these tags are not defined in any XML standard. These are self-invented. We can write, if you are writing an XML document, we can create it by our own. Okay. Now coming to XML features. If I am saying about XML features, now let's see. In the previous I have discussed, XML is used to transport data, is used to store and transport data. So the first feature of XML, we can say it focuses on data rather than how it looks. Okay. So XML is most popular because it completely focuses on the data. It does not focus on the data presentation. Okay. Now if I am talking about markup languages like HTML, if I am talking about CSS, etc. So all these focuses on HTML is mainly focuses on data presentation. But if I want to store some data, if we want to transport some data, we will be using XML. So first feature is XML focuses on data rather than how it looks. Second feature is easy and efficient data sharing. Now, since XML is software and hardware independent, so it is very easy to share on any hardware or software configuration. Suppose you have some configuration, some hardware specifications are not up to the mark, still you can share your data. Now, it is compatible with other markup language with like HTML. Okay. Now, since XML has a very important feature that it is very compatible with the XML with HTML. So when the data changes, suppose I am writing something, so it's not needed in that web page that we have to change the HTML content also. Next is it supports platform transition. Okay, because often we see that we have some data loss because of the incompatible format, but XML supports all the platform transitions. Next is XML validation. Now suppose you are writing an XML document, so we have to validate it, we have to check whether it is correct or not. So in that case, XML allows the validation with the help of DTD, document type definition, or XML schema. So with the help of DTD and XML schema, we can validate our data. Okay. Next is adapts technological advancement. Okay, since XML is popular because we can adapt to new technologies since it is platform independent. Okay, and XML supports Unicode. It supports Unicode because Unicode is the most widely used language, and even Java supports Unicode, and it is most widely accepted code. So we can say that since XML supports Unicode, so it is very easy to transfer, to communicate, and to store, to transport our data. Okay, so these are the basic features of XML. First of all, XML mainly focuses on data rather than how it looks. Second is it is very easy and efficient sharing. Then it is compatible with other markup language like HTML. Then it supports platform transition. If we are changing some platforms, then it supports. XML allows validation. We can validate our XML document using DTD or XML schema. Then XML adapts technological advancement. If we are using some new technology, still XML is being used because of its platform independent nature, and XML supports Unicode. Okay. So till now you have studied what is XML. XML is extensible markup language, and it is used to store and transport data. Okay. Then there is no predefined tag in XML. Since HTML always have a predefined tag, XML do not have any of the predefined tags, and all these features of XML. Okay. Now let's have a very quick review of HTML versus XML. You can see in HTML mainly focuses on how the data looks, but it focuses on data rather than its look. Okay, first thing. Then HTML is not case sensitive, but XML is case sensitive language. Now again, HTML is mainly concerned with presentation of data. XML is mainly used for storing and transporting of data. Then HTML is static. As I have already said, HTML creates static web pages. XML is dynamic. Okay. In HTML, closing tag is optional. Somewhere if you are writing paragraph, so its closing tag is not necessary. But in XML, the closing tag is mandatory. Okay. In HTML, we have some predefined tags. But in XML, there is no predefined tag. We can create our own tags while writing the XML document. Then last one, HTML does not preserve white spaces. However, XML preserves the white spaces. Okay. So in a nutshell, I can say that HTML is static. However, XML is dynamic. HTML is not case sensitive, but XML is case sensitive. Then in HTML, there is always predefined tags which we have to use, but in XML, we don't have any predefined tag. In HTML, the closing tag is optional, but in XML, closing tag is mandatory. Okay. Moving to next, XML tree. As you can see, XML tree. Now, XML document has a tree-like structure. What does tree means? Means it have some root, it have some child, it have some branches. Okay. In the same way, if you look at a tree, how it has a tree, it has a root, then its leaves are connected and through branches. So in this way, XML tree is created. Now you are seeing here. The first thing is XML version. I will be explaining it later on. That this is the prologue, and I will be explaining. You have written here company. So this company tag has at the end a closing tag. Okay. Then we are having an employee tag. These are all self created tag. Okay. Then I am having in the employee, I am having name, age and this. Then again I am having an address tag that is closed over here. So company is the main tag, root tag, then employee and address are the child tag. Then name, age and email are the subchild tag. Okay. Since I have said it have a tree like structure, that means we have some tree like structure, means we have a root element, then we have a child element, we have subchild element. In this way we will move forward. Okay. So you can see over here that in this we have a company. In the last slide you have seen, this is your root element. Okay. Okay. Now this is your child element. You can say this is your this is your sub, these all are your subchild, and this is again your subchild. Now see, you can see root element is what? It is company. Company is your root element. Child element is name, age, email and address. Then subchild are city, state, pin and landmark. This is how it works. Okay. So you can see that XML has tree-like structure, and this tree-like structure means it will always have a root element, it will have a child element, it will have subchild element. Okay. Now XML syntax. Now to write an XML, we will write our program in notepad and then we will save it with .xml. As you know, if you are writing an HTML web page, then you will be writing .html. If you are writing CSS, then you will be writing a .css. And if you are writing XML, then the program will be saved with .xml extension. Okay. Now the first most important rule in HTML is the root element is mandatory in XML. Okay. The most important point in XML is that root element is mandatory in XML. Okay. Now see. Suppose I have written here two examples. Now see, in the following example, message is the root element. Okay, you can see this is your example. Suppose, okay. So this is your example. I will just use a highlighter so it will be easy to understand for you. Now see, this is your prologue, then this is your message, this is your root element, it is having a closing tag. Okay. Now this is to opening and closing, this is from opening and closing, and this is subject and opening and closing, and this is text. So you can see you have a root element, that is message, and you have child element, that are to, from, subject and text. So this is the proper syntax of writing an XML document. When there is a root element and there are child elements, so we will be writing it. Okay. Now suppose we are using, see the next example, suppose I am using here. Now the following XML document is wrong because it does not have a root element. Now just have a look. This is the XML prologue, then you have written to, from, subject and text. Now where is the root element? We don't have any root element. When we don't have any root element, that XML document is considered to be wrong. Okay. So it is very compulsory always in writing XML that there must be a root element. in that root element there will be child element. Okay, so you must be clear that while writing an XML, root element is mandatory. Now second thing, every time XML is case sensitive. Since you have seen that HTML is not case sensitive, but XML is case sensitive. You can see over here that if you are writing from Paul from, so it is case, since it is case, it is valid. Why it is valid? Because the f is small in the lower case. Here also f is in the lower case. Now the second thing that you can see here, this one is invalid. Now why is it invalid? You can see the first letter of the closing is in capital, is in capital, while the first letter of the closing tag is in small. Now you can see this one, this from has capital F and this from has small f. So this is an invalid XML. So these two rules you have seen, that XML must always contain a root element, and the second is XML is case sensitive. Okay. Now coming to third one, what is XML prologue? This is very important thing that this you must know. Although it is optional, but it is always, it is the standard way of writing an XML is to write the XML prologue. It is the very first line of the XML. Okay, and you will be writing bracket question mark XML version is equal to 1.0, encoding is equal to UTF-8, then bracket close. Okay, this line is called XML prologue. Okay, and it specifies what is the XML version and what is the encoding used in the XML document. Okay, so there are three rules. First one is XML is case sensitive, then what is XML prologue, and the last one is that root element is mandatory. Okay, one more thing, that elements should not overlap, means we always we use nesting now. We can nest, we have used nested for loops, we have used nested tags in HTML. So when I'm saying about XML, elements should not overlap in XML. Okay, the proper nesting must be done. Suppose I'm writing class then teacher, so if teacher is coming at the end, so teacher must be, then class, then teacher must be closed before, then only the class. So nesting is not done properly, so this is your wrong. But if you see over here, class then teacher, then this is a rich name, then teacher is closed first, then class is closed after that. So it is the correct way. So nesting should be done properly in XML. Okay, now if I saying about we have attributes in XML, what I'm saying that we have attributes in XML, that we, suppose I'm writing text category is equal to message. You can have an exam tomorrow. Then category is the attribute and message is the attribute value. Okay. So you can see then in attributes in XML we can have attributes and its value. Okay. So the five things you have learned in XML syntax, that root element is mandatory, then it is case sensitive, then what is prologue in XML, then element should not overlap, and what are attributes in XML. Okay. Now let's have an example of XML. You have seen that the very first line written over here is XML prologue. You have seen, this is your XML prologue. Okay. Then coming to what is the root element, as I have said, XML must always contain a root element. So students, and it ends over here. Okay. So this is your root element. Okay. Now in the root element you have a child element, that is student. Okay. Then you have one child element over here. Okay. Then you have one child element over here. Okay. So you have three different child over. In that we have sub child, that is name, age, subject and gender. Again you have name, age, subject and gender. Again you have name, age, subject and gender. So this is the way in which you will write your XML program, that is root element, then subchild, and then child, and then subchild. Okay, you will write this in notepad, and then you will save it with .xml, then you will run it on any web browser. Okay. Now coming to XML attributes. In XML attributes, as I have mentioned earlier, that attributes contain some extra information. Okay. So just we have know that attributes are used to since it gives an extra information. If I am using an image and I am writing img src, means src is the attribute and it is giving some extra information to the image tag. In the same way, XML attributes are a way to add additional data to the XML elements. To the XML element, we are adding some extra information. Okay. Suppose now we are writing, we have added an attribute named brand. Now see, car brand is equal to Ford Figo. Okay. So this is the and value. So the brand is what? The name is the brand is the attribute and Ford Figo is the value. Okay. In this way we can declare our attribute. Okay. Now suppose I want to declare with two or more attributes, with one or more attributes, then we will be writing as, see, car brand Ford Figo, then category is equal to subcompact car. Okay. So you can see we have two attributes over here. In the car, car tag, we have two attributes. One is brand and one is category. So we can use in this way also. Okay. So how we can see attributes? There is a name and then we have one property and the property value. Okay. So here brand and category are your attributes and Ford Figo and subcompact car are its value. Okay. Now again we have some rules for writing your XML attributes. The first rule is attributes are name and value. So you have you always must have a name in the attribute. You must have a name, that is the name is brand, and then you must have the value. So you are seeing that over here that you have the value, attribute name and value. So attribute name must not be in the quotes. So you can see over here that car brand, and brand is in double quotes. What is brand? Brand over here is XML attributes. So it must not be in the double quotes. The value must be in the double quotes. Okay. So car brand is equal to Ford Figo, and this Ford Figo is in double quotes. So in XML, the first rule is the attribute must be written simply and the value must be written in double quotes. Okay. Second, XML elements can have one or more attributes. Okay. Well, we have seen in the last one that car brand. See over here that car brand. You can see that car brand is Ford Figo. So car as an element have two or more features, two or more XML elements. Okay, XML attributes. Okay. So this is what we have seen. Now see, attributes cannot contain duplicate multiple values. Now you have written car, then brand, Ford Figo, brand, support. So you have your these two brand and brand have been written twice. So we are using two attributes, but this is wrong. We cannot duplicate our values. Okay. Now we are seeing where we will use XML attribute and what is XML elements. As I am regularly discussing XML attributes and XML elements, let's have a look. Okay. So here brand is an attribute. As I have mentioned earlier that brand, this is attribute and this is your value. So brand is an attribute. Now here you can see brand is an element. In both the example you can see that XML will contain the same data. However, you must prefer always to use XML element over XML attribute. Now why we will be using, I will be discussing it later on. Okay. So you can just have a look again over here. Now see, car brand. So this is your XML attribute. Now brand is has been used here as a tag. So it is your element. Okay. Now, why should we prefer? As I have said that we should be preferring to use XML elements over XML attributes. Now, see, attributes cannot have multiple values while elements can have. Okay, first most important thing. Then it is very difficult to test against. As I have said that in XML we can validate our data. So attributes can be validated. Okay, but attributes are difficult to validate. I'm sorry, attributes are difficult to validate. Although elements are easy to validate and elements can easily be handled by the programming languages. Okay. Now coming to XML namespaces. Now since it is our tag, since we can define our own tag, when we are defining our own tag there may be name conflicts. So to avoid these name conflicts, XML namespace have been added. How you will see? Now see. Suppose you are writing XML elements. Okay. Now you have written a program. ठीक है, and this XML carries HTML information, table, tr, td, ttr, then apple, banana. Okay. Now this XML carries information about a table again. So table tag, then name, width, and length. Now you can see if you have to see, both contain table tag. Okay. Now see, this one also contains table tag. Okay, and this also contains table tag. Now what, there will be a name conflict because this table tag and this tag are same. So to avoid these name conflicts, we will be using XML namespaces. How we will be using, let's see over here. So to avoid the name conflict in XML, we will be using a prefix. Okay, now how we will be using? See, in the last slide you have seen that table and table tag over here and table tag over here were same. Now if I am prefixing it, that h table and then h colon tr, h colon td, so it is very clear that I am talking about this table. And when I am writing f table, then it is clear for this table. So there will be no conflict. So it is always preferred to use XML namespaces so as to avoid your name conflicts. So thank you class. Now I am going to make a quick revision on what I have taught you till now. So what is XML? XML is basically used to store and transport data, and it is extensible markup language. We don't have any predefined tag. We can create our own tag Okay, and XML is case sensitive language. Next, what are the basic syntax to write XML? In the XML has a tree like structure. It always have a root element, it has child element, it has subchild element. So in XML, root element is mandatory. Second thing, XML is case sensitive language. Then you should be taking care of how to write an XML using, since it is case sensitive. Then XML is having XML prologue must always be written. It is the first line of the document and its prologue must always be written. Now coming to XML tags must be properly nested. Okay, since we have if it is not properly nested, then we will have some error. Okay, now comes the XML attributes. So we have an attribute value, then an attribute value will be written in double quotes, and attribute name. Okay, and we must always prefer to use XML element instead of XML attributes. Again, then we are talking about XML namespaces. In XML namespaces, you can say if we are having some error, if we are having some conflict between two names, since all the tags are developed by humans only and they are developed by the developer. So as there is no predefined tag, so we may have some we may have some conflicts. So it is always preferred to use some namespaces. To add some namespaces, we can simply add a name, we can simply prefix it with some name, and then we will use some colon. Okay, so this is the XML where we have seen. Now let's see one program in XML. Okay, coming to okay, as I have written one program already over here, you can see, let me open it in notepad, then you will be very clear that how we will be writing it. See, this is your prologue. As I have already mentioned that you have to use your prologue. Okay, then then we have a company tag, opening tag, and company closing tag. That means we are having at least a root element. Okay, then we are having employee name, age, and email. Okay, we are having each opening tag has a closing tag. Then we are having an address, and in the address we are having the address of that person. Now we have a employee closing tag. So okay, now when you have to save it, you have to save it with .xml. Suppose .xml. Okay, all files, then save over here. Just replace it. Okay, now this is, you have saved your XML. Now run it on any web browser. Now see, this is how it you will get. Okay, we have not applied any CSS, so it is showing that. See, this is company, this is your root tag. If I want to minimize it, we can. So in the address, you can see over here, since this tag will be used, as I have said, XML is used to carry the information. It is used to transport the information. This is how information will be transported. Now address, city, state, pin, and we are having the value. Okay, then the employee name, age, and email. Okay, now this, if you will close, the employee tag will close, that is the child has closed all its subset tag. If I am closing the company tag, we will be like this. So it is expandable also. It is also said, that is why it is said as extensible markup language. Okay, and rest all the programs you must do by your own, and if you all have any query, you can ask me in the comment section, and till then you keep studying. Okay, thank you class.